Great. Good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone to the April 12th meeting of the CACC Board of Directors, and it will include the first of two Budget Committee meetings. Very first item on our agenda is actually it's the second item because the first item is called. The second item is the native lands acknowledgement, and the purpose of this is to acknowledge someone is to say, "I see you. You are significant." And the purpose of the land acknowledgement is to recognize and pay respect to the original inhabitants of this region. It's an opportunity for us to express gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory we exist in. The CACC land acknowledgement is as follows. CACC would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land our campuses reside on are the original homelands of the Wasco or the Wasco and the Wanalama Warm Springs people. They ceded this land to the U.S. government in the Treaty of 1855. The Newman or the Paiute people were forcibly moved to the Warm Springs Indian Reservation starting in 1879. It's also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds, and the Klamath tribes claim it as their own. Descendants of these original people are thriving members of our communities today. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land. The next item is roll call.
Yeah, so tonight I'll do roll call with our board and SLT, and then I'll ask our budget members just so we have who wants to state your name for the record, please, as we go around. So Bruce Abernethy.
Here.
Joe Krenowitz.
Here.
Oliver Tatum.
Here.
Alan Unger.
Here.
Erica Scapel. Here. Laura Pasca Cooper.
Here.
Jim Clinton.
Here.
Paul Taylor.
Here.
Dr. Chetley. Here. Alicia Moore. Here. Laura Bomey. Here. Zach Boone. Anne Marie Hanlon. Here. And then our budget members going around the table. Would you mind
Justin Saylor. Roger Detweiler.
Harry Hamilton.
Debbie Haar.
Rebecca Lambert. And Rick on Zoom.
Richard Hurd.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And actually, what I'm going to do, because we needed to do it at some point before we adjourned into the budget committee, I'm going to actually ask that the board members only at this point formally approve Rebecca Lambert as a member of the budget committee. Laura, you want to make any comments about Rebecca?
Please, I would appreciate that. Rebecca is a relatively new member of Crook County community, about 2 years, but she has jumped in with both feet, as they say. She is the executive director of the Crook County Foundation, which, by the way, administers a whole bunch of scholarships to our students. So she's very aware and conversant with COCC and our scholarship program. And she also has been trying to extricate herself from her private consulting business, but not done so well. So she's kind of doing two jobs. But she's got a tremendous background in nonprofit consulting, particularly focused on strategic planning. And so she and her husband relocated to Crook County, as I said, 2 years ago. And I was thrilled when she said she would be interested in being a member of our budget committee. And Rebecca, I don't know if you want to give a little bit more about yourself.
No, I think that's probably sufficient. I'm honored that Laura asked, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you very much.
And I had the pleasure of having dinner with her, so I can at least do a side. I'm going to assume that Laura's comments acts as a motion.
Man, I move to appoint Rebecca Lambert.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Great, thank you very much. Next, what we're going to do, actually, we're going to switch things around a little bit. I'm going to move to the public comment section. So is there anybody in the room that wishes to make any public comments to the board? Please come on up.
Good evening. My name is Gary Reynolds. I'm here to talk briefly about the veterans and veterans that COP's doing. First, a little about me. I'm understaffed. I'm a science tutor, so I work 12 hours a week in the science center. And I mostly tutor chemistry and math that goes with that. I'm also a veteran, retired from the Navy after 21 years, and then spent 16 more years working for the Air Force. And then I've been fortunate that I was fully immersed in the Veterans Administration when I got out. So I've had the opportunity to use all my benefits to include some of my education. Next, I'd like to thank all of you for your public service. Doing a public, working for the public, working here, just makes our community better. And I saw that in my supervisors and mentors when they did public service. It just helped everybody. So thank you for your service. It matters. There's three things about veterans I'd like you to consider and think about. And I'll keep these at this in a strategic level. My big boss that I worked for a long time, he concentrated on budget. He worked 3 to 5 years out. He had plenty of people that did the execution in years 1 and 2. And it was clear that his strategic decisions in budgeting really made programs flow, kept things going. He was responsible for about 75 people and about $50 million a year. So he did a great job. But three things to specifically consider. The GI Bill now for education is forever. There previously were time limits on it. And the GI Bill is also transferable to your dependents. So now you may have students using their GI Bill that can be my age, or it could be their children who are using it. So the GI Bill education benefits are much broader. In value, it's about $50,000. If you use it correctly, go to a Yale urban school, you can stretch that into paying for 4 years bachelor's degree with nothing out of your pocket. So, and that's a recent change in 2013 with the GI education benefit became a lifetime benefit. Second item to consider is a veterans coordinator really matters. It really, really matters. Your student population here, it's around 500 veteran students, around 10% of the student population. It's pretty big. Probably the award of the $600,000 grant, I think, reflects on that effort that's been going on. Why does a veterans coordinator matter? You've got veterans here that have made a decision to use their education benefits, but many of them never reach out for more. Specifically, there's disability and compensation benefits that can last for a lifetime. Many of your military related items don't show up to older. I'm also certified with the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs. I go out to find older veterans, get them to apply for the benefit. Here we have young veterans already using part of their benefits. That veterans coordinator can kind of mentor and coach them into going to visit the county veteran service officer, going to the VA to apply for their disability compensation, and do those other things. And it can take 2 to 3 years to get through that process. Many of the young folks are just angry or they've had enough in the military. That veterans coordinator really can help them focus and can bring them back into more benefits. And then the third item is I'd ask you to consider keeping Veterans Affairs in your baseline budget. You had one grant from the state which was expiring, got another one from the U.S. Department of Education that you think you get to execute over the next 3 years. I would ask to resist the urge to take Veterans Affairs items out of the baseline and live solely on a grant, and then in 3 years be struggling to determine, well, how we can pay for this. So I think that this creating a veteran center of excellence will create something that's permanent for the community and will continue to do good for a long time. That's it. If you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them. If not, thank you very much for your time and thank you very much for your service.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Dr. Cheswick, do you want to say anything or respond or totally up to you?
No, thank you for your comments. As you know, we have recently received a pretty substantial grant and you didn't name her by name, but I will. Bonnie Jordan is our current Veterans Coordinator, and she has done an amazing job. And so you're absolutely right in saying that currently that work is grant funded. Please be assured that it's on our mind as something to keep. And that we're not going to stop doing that work.
Thank you. The next, any other comments? Jen, anybody from online? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the president's report.
Are our star students here? Yeah,
Not quite yet.
not quite yet. Well, then I'm gonna start with the star campus safety director. No pressure, Corey. I wanted to invite Corey Darling here tonight just to introduce himself to all of you. He's been on the job. He was on the job before he even technically started, and I just couldn't be more delighted at how he's jumped in and really instilled some energy into the department. And I thought it might be nice if he introduced himself to you, and if you wanted to even ask him a couple questions, I bet he'd answer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. My name is Corey Darling. I've lived in Bend since 1984. So I've been around for a very period of time. I have a experience in law enforcement, total of 34 years. Most of that was with the City of Bend Police Department. The last 4 years was with the Sun River Police Department, and I served as the chief of police down there. So when Lori asked to have a conversation about this position, it was very exciting to me. Like I said, I've been in the area for a long time. I actually attended COCC back in the 90s. So this is kind of home to me. If you have any questions at all, I'll answer them.
Chief Darling, I just want to say, I have been very frustrated how long it has taken to fill this position. I can only imagine how frustrating it has been for Lori and the staff.
And Andrew Davis.
It was worth the wait.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What do you see as some of the challenges of trying to sort of merge your own training and the philosophies here at COCC, or what do you feel like you've learned during your short time thus far on the job?
You know, it's I think the good news is I don't have staff. So we're going to build from the ground up and develop our own staff that really fits into the vision of what the campus safety is going to be. And we really want to get away from that enforcement piece and really build on preparedness and education and building trust and communication with not only the faculty and staff, but the students as well. So they feel comfortable in engaging us if there's ever an issue that pops up.
Communication, I guess. How do you plan to do it? I mean, we got students who just text and then older people who just use the phone.
I know, exactly. Have a couple of different ideas, but primarily we want to get out and have that face-to-face communication with the students. And that means, attending their groups and being engaged in any events that they may be having. So we want to be that face-to-face. And then we're going to use all of the fantastic communication avenues that Jen's put in place. And hopefully we can keep that going and build that trust. So there's no lag time in between us and the students if there ever is a problem that does arise.
Great. Any other questions?
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you. Delighted to have you here.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, our students are all now present. Okay. I'm going to turn this over to Beth Wright, and she has with her 4 of our absolute best students to introduce and tell you about how they've been honored.
Sure. So each year, Oregon's community colleges select 2 transfer and 2 CTE students for the All Oregon Academic Team Award. This honor recognizes high achieving students who demonstrate academic excellence and intellectual rigor, leadership skills and service that extend beyond the classroom to benefit our society. The All Oregon Academic Team medallions and certificates at the state level recognition ceremony, along with scholarships. The recognition ceremony takes place in Salem with a guest list that includes college presidents and state legislators. So to say that this is a big deal is an understatement. As such, we would like to extend a warm welcome to the 2023 COCC All Oregon Academic Team and the faculty who nominated them. My faculty have the distinct pleasure of introducing these exceptional students to our board of directors. And we're going to start off with Matt.
Hi, thank you for having me here today. This is real fun. Getting to meet students like this is not something that happens, well, it does happen every day, but it's still somewhat rare. Right, so as a teacher, it's always a special moment when you make a connection. Right, hundreds of students cross our paths every time, and ideally we would have time and space for every single one. Unfortunately, the ideal and the real don't always mesh. And so those moments when those relationships between students and teachers do meet are to be cherished and held apart. I count myself as very lucky in this regard of having made a real connection with a fair number of students during my time here at COCC, and Oscar Tovar is one of these students. Oscar has taken both lab and lecture courses from me. He's excelled with the best grade in all of these classes that he takes from me, and he pursues knowledge with both thoughtfulness and passion. That's possible. It's a somewhat rare combination. But perhaps the most important thing I can say to you about Oscar is that on Thursday nights, I have this informal journal club I do with past and present students and other faculty and sort of stuff. It takes place at my house. And it can be taken for credit. There is a 1 credit associated with it for most, but most students just come because they want to. And Oscar goes this extra mile just for fun. He has taken it for credit, but he just comes because he has a voracious appetite for knowledge, if you know Oscar. Without a doubt, he is an excellent student. I have been impressed with the types of questions he raises during our discussions. His willingness to think outside the box on a variety of subjects is phenomenal. So my impression of Oscar is that he is both generous and deeply interested to help people find their way in their communities. He is welcoming and eager to listen to other people and to work collaboratively. This team play serves him incredibly well in achieving common interests, coalition building, and trying to solve challenges. So it is my pleasure to introduce you tonight to Oscar.
My name is Oscar Tovar. That was a very nice introduction. Thank you. I'm just going to say a few words about myself and just like why I chose COCC. I am a psychology major who decided to come here after high school. I had always heard really high words about COCC, and I knew students who had attended here. And I wanted to see how well I would perform in a university setting at higher education. And coming here, I am honestly really, really, really sad to be saying that I'm going to be graduating this term. Like, if this was a 4-year university, I would not be leaving. I truly love the faculty and students and community here so much. I just think it's absolutely amazing, and I've been able to get involved with so much more than I thought I would be able to when I first joined. And I truly have enjoyed my time here more than anything, and I feel so honored to have received this as well. And I just want to say thank you to my nominators, and also thank you all to the entire board for just making this such a wonderful school. Thank you. Yeah.
He's a member of student government and has just been part of a great group this year, so it's been fantastic to work with all of them. So thank you for that too.
Next, Venus.
That's me.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come back again. And for this particular purpose, to introduce my student, which is not, I'm going to try to cry through it. Nacho Ruiz, who is a 10th student in the AOT, who already got their degree this past winter, but is finishing up the new certificate programs and has been working through that with me. And I got the pleasure, since I'm fairly new here, of meeting Nacho, who was a federal work study student in the 3D program. And I kind of went over there and said, hey, come into the computer lab and hang out with me for a while. And so he came in and he was able to manage the digital studio, which we had never had before. And it used to be not quite as fancy as we have now. And so he's gone through the trenches with me of building up that program, working through everything, and really being one of the first individuals to focus in and get these certificates. And we'll be graduating that certificate here this term. And so he lives in Madras and for the most part has done online classes. And as a federal work study student, taking the opportunity to drive here just to be in the lab and help other students to learn this technology and work their way through the program, which has been such a blessing for me. And to be trusted with all that new equipment is also a really big deal. So I don't have to be there all the time. So much for that. And let's see, good everything on the list because there's a lot. He's part of the Latinx Club. And again, supporting me, was able to revive the Art and Design Club as a student lead for that club. And with all of the clubs, we felt like it was very important because I took him with me to all of the cultural clubs and we looked at things and said that it'd be great, like student clubs need to be led by students. And I am so lucky that Nacho leads all of those students, those meetings, drives from Madras down and runs the Art and Design Club meetings, and I stand there. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. So that has been also a wonderful thing. He's validated the work that I've done and the department has put into building online visual arts programs. He's been part of music, he's into theater, he's an advocate for the arts on all levels, and it's been a blessing to have him with us. So before I start crying, I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you for, like Oscar said, that long introduction. So I did theater in high school and I like having a script in front of me, so read you my little script. So first off, thank you for having me. This is such an honor. As I am the first in my family to go to college and obtain my associate's degree. My mother, she is a single parent who raised 2 children on her own and gave us her full love and support since day one. And she missed the opportunity to obtain her high school degree. When I first graduated high school, I attended Central Washington University, where I felt like a little fish in a big pond, despite my size. After that first year, I decided to move back home, feeling very undecided about career and my future. So I just decided to enroll at COCC and started taking some courses in the visual arts. My first class that I took at COCC was with Bill Kravis, as you may remember him. And this past winter, I received my AAOT, and I'm currently working on finishing my certificate of illustration. I currently work as an educational assistant at Madras High School, where I graduated in 2020. And I have also had many opportunities as an artist, such as working with the Environmental Center for the upcoming Earth Day Fair and Parade. I was the featured artist for that. So if you see that poster work that they released, that was my work. I really like getting in touch with my Indigenous roots. And so that poster kind of is a representation of my Hispanic roots. Now, after giving back to the community, I feel it is best to give back to my mother, who is currently a GED student through COCC. And she just needs one more test to receive her GED. And I am supporting her as she has supported me and giving her all the love she has given me. Thank you. That last line really.
Yeah.
I'm here to introduce my student. It certainly isn't everyone's dream to attend college right out of high school, but it was for this. Finances and personal issues pushed a family of 7 to leave their hometown of Jalisco, Mexico for a better life. Dropping out of high school to provide for their 5 children, both parents worked tirelessly in the service industry. Raised by the incredible work ethic of both parents, igniting the spark to someday attend college. But first, this young girl had to overcome the substantial idea that college would never be an option. Process that took 4 years of mindful planning. After making that first step, she arrived in Central Oregon with no car and a very small amount of money. She enrolled at COCC and has since maintained full-time school and work schedules, achieving a consistent 4.0 GPA, sometimes taking 17 credits. Going above and beyond what is required of a student in the classroom, this student dedicated time to work with classmates in need, both during and outside of class time. She's an incredible representative of our profession to the community. She's well liked by her instructors and demonstrates excellence in all areas. At only 23 years old, she's overcome adversity and poverty, and after this term, will be first in her family to earn her degree. As witness to the potential of higher education, she plans to continue her journey through academia and provide care for those in need as a licensed professional in her new career. Congratulations, Adriana. Welcome home.
I appreciate that so much. That means the world to me. Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana Altamirano. I have recently become licensed and employed as a massage therapist. Will be graduating with my associates this June. It's been a long journey to reach this point. When I moved to Bend 6 years ago after high school, I was fully independent and on my own. At the time, I knew I wanted to attend college, but was faced with financial hardships. However, the supportive scholarships offered by COCC truly changed my ability to further my education. I chose COCC to pursue massage therapy and earn my degree. Along the way, I've met some of the most caring and supportive teachers and staff who I'm immensely grateful for. I am eager to embark on this new journey ahead of me and the ability to provide restorative care for others. I am also planning to further my education in an effort to support my goal of medical-based massage. Again, I would like to offer my thanks and gratitude to all those who have supported me along the way and have helped me to achieve my goals. Thank you so much for having me here.
Tell us who you are.
Yeah, Alan Nunes, Program Director of Massage Therapy.
Like our awesome faculty.
I'm Lisa Shipman from the aviation department. My student Claire Landon unfortunately fell me this morning suffering from the flu, so she is not here tonight, and she wanted to extend her warm appreciation and thanks for this honor. Claire comes to us from Sisters High School, and they also have an aviation program at the high school level. And she came to us with some financial hardship and has managed to work almost full time while also attending the program and training out at the airport, which is almost like another full degree as she's going through. She's maintaining a very high GPA. And she helps us mentor other high school students. As we connect with other high schools, we have a connection with Sisters High School and a couple of the other high schools in the local area. And she has been instrumental in showing up to our presentations, kind of marketing to students and mentoring those students along the way, as well as she helps our incoming students. Students start in the aviation program. It's pretty overwhelming at first, and she has spent quite a bit of time mentoring and helping brand new students as they come into the program. She's won one of the coveted spots with Horizon Airlines that we have a program in our pilot development program that is pathway into employment with Horizon Airlines. They come, in fact, they're coming on Monday. They come twice a year and do some interviews with our students. And a few handful out of our entire program, over 200 students get selected for those positions, and she has managed to win one of those. So Claire When she gets finished with her degree, she will be coming back to teach for us as a flight instructor before she moves on to Horizon Airlines. And she's one of our token females in the program, so I always like to see our our girls succeed. And she's been very good in also mentoring some of our other female students who come in. Sometimes it's a little tough because we have a very male dominated program and some of our females come in. It's always nice to see them on, and she's been a mentor to all of those. So I am very proud to have her get this award, and she wanted to extend her thanks for that too. So she's done very well.
And just as a reminder, in years past, students, if they're transferring to another Oregon public unit or public or private university, they do get a scholarship as a result of being part of this award. And then they get to have lunch with all the other students across the state, along with presidents, board members. Beth is taking our crew this year. And if it all works out, a photo opportunity with the governor. So it's a great honor to connect with and make some colleagues from across the state, and as well as transfer to pursue their next goal. So congratulations to all.
Yes, again, thank you very much. This is a wonderful opportunity, and it's a nice way to sort of remind us on the board as to why we do what we do and why we enjoy so much being part of this great team. So thank you for everybody involved. Next item, are there any agenda changes other than ones I've already made?
No.
Okay, we are going to, we're going to adjourn to the budget committee meeting. And I know we earlier sort of went around and just did names, but I would love an opportunity. Let's go around again and just let's take 20-30 seconds and sort of introduce yourself to fellow committee. Basically, the budget committee is comprised of the 7 members of the board and 7 members of the community, sort of aligned in the same geographic region that each of the board members are. And so I think it would be really valuable for each of us to sort of hear kind of what role you have and experience either with finance or things that expertise that you think you can bring to this process. So I'll go ahead and start. My name is Bruce Abernethy. I'm on the board. This is my 12th and final year of being on the board, and it's been a wild and really fun ride. I'm looking forward to seeing what Kathleen is sharing with us, and know that she's been mentored by Dave Dona, and before that, other people as well that have really done a fabulous job of keeping the school on a strong financial footing. But again, I really much enjoyed my time being on the board. Joe?
I'm Joe Krenowitz. I've got a little over a decade, starting with the budget committee here at COCC, and I'm a board member at this point in time. And I represent Jefferson County. I'm the executive director for the Chamber of Economic Development for Jefferson County.
I'm Oliver Tatum. I'm in my 4th and final year as a member of the board. I was a student at COCC. I came back to school to earn my nursing license. And at the end of this term, I'll be passing the torch to Aaron behind me, who's running unopposed for seat 7. Very happy to be here with you all tonight.
My name is Alan Unger. I represent Redmond. My district just keeps getting smaller as the population of Redmond grows, but it's still the city limits of Redmond a little more. And I grew up in Redmond, went to University of Portland. I spent about, I don't know, 20 years in local government, retired now, been on COCC board for about 6+ years. I'm enjoying it. I think that education in Central Oregon is one of our valuable assets we have here in growing with OSU Cascades, and the partnership we have together. It's just going to help our communities in Central Oregon, not just Bend, grow and be more successful.
My name is Destin Saylor. I am a small business program manager with the Warm Springs Community Action Team, the local nonprofit on the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. Busy with that, and I also assist the Warm Springs tribe, my tribe, with economic development. I can be part of this.
I'm Roger Detweiler. I'm a lawyer by trade, but
Then most make career to manage professional associations. Legal and health. I am 6 months assistant. And then it's really so.
Great, thank you. Harry?
Harry Hamilton, and I guess I'm kind of representing higher education. Had a long career as a professor of atmospheric physics on the East Coast, and then a shorter term as a herder of cats as the provost at a private university, Southern California, south of Los Angeles, and then retired up here about 15 years ago. I can thank Oliver Tatum for getting me involved with the board. And I've been very pleased to be on the budget committee for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. I thought I was done before I got this letter from the president.
Sort of a rolling term.
So it has been a pleasure to get on the inside of COCC to see how the money flows and how the power flows and so on. So I'm retired. Where'd Corey go?
Long gone.
I had recruited Corey into Rotary in Sun River, and he did a splendid job. And it's a delight to see him here. He'll do a good job for COCC. So I'm an academic. As much as that term is misused sometimes. And I try to bring a reasonable approach to the science end of things as I conduct my business with the budget committee. And I enjoy living down on the edge of Sun River. Thank you. Laura?
Laura Kraska Cooper. I have been on the COCC board for almost 12 years, a few months after Bruce, but I'm not leaving, at least not this year. I have an election in 2 years, so that's another issue. I was on the budget committee for 3 years before that. My day job is as a real estate and land use lawyer, and I represent Cook County. I've been in the area for about 25 years. I moved here from the Bay Area.
Erica Scaffold. I have been on the board for almost 6 years now, and I took classes at COCC in high school, and I've taken them over the last few years. I was taking prereqs for nursing school, and now it's a little bit on pause. I currently work for St. Charles as the director of quality management, and when I was in the clinical practice professional development department, I got to partner with COCC through that role, which was fun, to set up the CNA program. I just love COCC. It's a pillar of our community. It's changed so many people's lives here in the community, and that I know personally. And I'm just really proud to be a board member. And thank you all that are willing to serve on this board and as part of the budget committee, because I'm just really grateful. And now I'm really nervous because I'm speaking in front of you all, and you all are so amazing. And I'm trying to, so anyways, I'm going to hand it off to Debbie now.
I'm Debbie Carr. I'm a long-term Bend resident, although I did grow up in Minnesota. I've been here 50 years. I did get my degree through Linfield College, though I started out at COCC and got associate classes. And I'm a retired financial analyst, and I'm just happy to be on the budget committee as well.
Rebecca Lambert, you heard a little bit about me a very short while ago. Relatively new, as Laura said, to Central Oregon, moved to Pineville just under 2 years ago. And as I said to Laura, my husband and I were in Pineville for about a week and looked at each other and said, this is absolutely terrific. This is the place where we are supposed to be. It's through the Cook County Foundation that I first got to know COCC, and it is through the Pineville campus. And I think it's just an extraordinary asset for our community. And I am happy to serve. My background, as mentioned, is primarily in the nonprofit sector, consulting, and prior to that, in the arts and management, arts and culture sector. So I came to Oregon as executive director of the Eugene Symphony. So my financial background is primarily in the nonprofit world. So a bit of a transition to public sector, and I know you all helped me.
Great, thank you. Let's go online. Jim?
Yeah, I'm Jim Clinton, and along with Erica, represent much of Bend on the board. This business in Oregon, where all taxing districts have to have a budget committee of the same number as the underlying board. At first, I was not so much on the wavelength, but after experiencing it both at the city and now at the college, I realized how that is important that concept is in getting members of the community involved in their major institutions around, especially here in Central Oregon. The unique thing about the COCC board and budget committee is that it's a region-wide thing, and unlike the somewhat parochial sometimes city councils and so on. But anyway, my own background is also as a physics person. So we have like 2 physics guys out of 14, which is an unusually high ratio, no question about it. I'm not so much of an academic, I'm more of an applied physics guy. But anyway, I spent a lot of years in higher education at all different levels. And it was one of the guiding principles of my life is that higher education is the single most effective method for transforming people's lives for the better. And it's a great tragedy when people in their own lives don't have an opportunity to participate in higher education. And COCC in this region fills a really important niche in providing these higher education opportunities to people who otherwise probably would not participate, because most of the major universities and all the private colleges and so on are not in Central Oregon. So anyway, I have been really happy being on the board and working with all the colleagues we have on the board, and then the faculty, the students, and the administrators. It's been a great experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Is it Rick or Rich who's on?
Yes, Richard Hurd.
Please introduce yourself.
I'm a retired CPA. I spent 40 some years in the insurance industry doing audits and financial management of insurance organizations. When I retired, I moved up here and I saw an ad in the newspaper. The budget committee had an opening, and I interviewed with Ron Paradis and David Dona, and they both gave me a good introduction. And I saw an agency, a quasi-governmental educational organization that is extremely well run. Compliments to Dr. Chesley and to Catherine Knutson, who runs a tight finance operation. And I think I'm in my second or third term of the 3-year rolling term. But Dr. Chesley keeps sending me invitations and I keep coming to meetings. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking us up on it. The next sort of item, it's not on anyone's agenda, is we need to select a chair to run these budget committee meetings. Typically, it has been a non-board member. So let me sort of throw that out. For some of you newbies, you're welcome to throw your hat in the ring, but you should not feel under any pressure to do so. But those who have served on the budget committee before know that it is not a heavy lift to be chair, but I think what I would love to do is if someone is willing to serve in that role.
Looking to see who's not making eye contact.
Yeah. Just looking around.
I certainly would like to see Roger or Harry take that on. You're familiar with our organization, familiar with the process. You can carry it on your shoulder.
I respectfully decline.
Nicely.
Thank you very much. Let's vote. I'll make a motion for Roger to be as chair. Is there a second?
A second.
Moved to second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. There's no gavel per se, Roger, but why don't you go ahead? I think your primary roles are really to sort of call the meeting to order. You can turn things over to Kathleen. And I guess I would say almost kind of be like a timekeeper. Make sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask questions. Don't let anybody monopolize the floor as we go along, and then adjourn at the end. Does that make sense?
I can do that.
Oh, great.
You did it last
Then why was, okay.
year. No, it was good. I like that. It was that hot.
Okay, great. You were up now.
Call a convening of the budget to order. If I turn the presentation of the budget.
All right, I'll pull up my presentation, Dr. Chesney's room.
Yeah, and I'll just give a little introduction while Kathleen gets ready. Wanted to chat a little bit about some of what an English teacher would call the major themes of this year's budget development process, and we're all fortunate Kathleen deals with the mathematics of it. We set out for the college last fall as we always do, some budget priorities so that folks had an idea what would be the focuses of our budget development process and what we thought were the things most needful for the future. And so those priorities were, and it doesn't mean these are the only things, it means priorities, were addressing faculty salaries, where we know that we are below where we would like to be. You won't hear us really say anything about that tonight because we are in negotiations right now with the faculty forum, and that would be really inappropriate. Both teams are doing a great job, and we'll have more information for you at another time. The second priority was, and this makes Josh Clausen, our director of campus services, happy, was deferred maintenance. We have some really old systems and some really old buildings. And so we wanted to allocate some significant dollars to the priorities that he and his team identified. And I think that will be a subject more for May. But I wanted you to know that those things were top of mind. I think another theme that we have in this process is uncertainty. And it's not a terribly worrisome uncertainty. I don't mean to say that in any kind of scary or ominous way. It's just that we know there's a legislative session in progress in Salem, and we won't know for a month or two yet. But Kathleen is like, please, tomorrow. But we won't know for a while yet what the final allocation we'll receive from the state is. So you may see some numbers tonight that when you go to vote on the budget in June, might be a little different. Right now, our planning has us, I think, in good stead. We used as our starting point the governor's recommended budget. And right now, Ways and Means is 0.5% below that. And so we're not too worried, to be honest. We also we know that, and Alicia will speak to this briefly later, that although it won't come into place this year or even the next, we are facing a new community college support fund funding formula. Everything that so it just makes forecasting a little bit more difficult, longer term. But everything we've seen of that model, and again, I won't say too much now, seems quite favorable to us. So that's, again, it's an uncertainty, but it's not a terrible worry. The other theme that I've been talking about a lot on campus is choices. We have to make choices. And that's hard because, as I also say commonly, we don't get frivolous requests from our faculty and staff that come through the budget process. There wasn't a frivolous request in the bunch. And that means you have really difficult decisions to make when you want to, allocate to priorities, when you want to keep your reserves, when you want to also leave room to do some new things. So choices, there were more choices this year, I think, than usual. There were some things that were requested as new money that didn't get funded. And usually I think we can do a little more, but again, we had some other priorities we needed to focus on. So the goal is always maintain our strong fiscal position, one that this board has historically expected, and I support it. So maintain that strong position and also be able to invest again in some new directions. And we're doing that with things like our Madras expansion. So there you go. Priorities, uncertainty, choices, maintenance, and investment. That's how an English teacher thinks of it.
Ugly acronym. You ever?
It works. So now Kathleen is going to delve into more detail. And she's doing a great job.
Okay, minimize all your buttons. There you go. Okay. And the podium here, but I work out to the group. First of all, thank you to the board and the budget committee. Welcome to our new members. And thank you to Dr. Quigley for the remarks. The next few slides will provide a current year update, information on enrollment trends, tuition and fees, property tax, and state funding. Then we'll look at the 23-24 key revenue and expenditure assumptions. And finally, we'll go over next year's forecast and proposed budget. I will take questions at the end, but if you need clarity on any of the slides, feel free. Our general fund is the college's primary operating fund. It accounts for the financial operations of the college. Our objective is precision of revenue and expense forecasting and tracking as a means of developing the operating budget within the context of a balanced operating position. Activities designated or required to be accounted for as specific fund type are included as non-general funds, which will be covered in next month's board meeting. So we try to identify financial trends early when there is time to plan and make changes. Our goal is to understand long-term effects of budget decisions. We review and forecasting is required by the board. It is also recommended by accreditation standards and bond committees. So this slide is a look at our current year projected revenue. The blue column is what we are projecting. The budget column, which are the total that was approved in last year's budget. Our state aid is actually coming in a little bit higher for the year than what was anticipated. Our property tax is close to what was forecasted. Tuition and fees were budgeted at enrollment being 4% down. So we're actually coming in a little higher than we anticipated. The line for other revenue, including interest, program, and miscellaneous income. I will note that's less than 1% of our budget. In hindsight, I did a poor job of forecasting that a year ago. It includes some cell tower lease income, as well as some program revenue from our culinary. Oh, sorry.
No, I appreciate you doing that, but I was hoping that you'll address that. Like, it's significantly higher than miscellaneous income this year. Not on this slide, I'm looking at a different, a different slide, but like it was 136 or 138 in the current year, and it's proposed for 244. I'm just wondering what the big increase, but maybe that's what you're explaining is that more things are counted now in it? Is that-
Yes, so when we're looking at this year, we're definitely down than what was forecasted. For next year, there are two new revenue streams. One is the new cell tower lease. That we hope to engage in, and another is from Pacific Power. And Alicia has a little more detail on that if we want to get into that, but it's just another revenue source that we fall in.
Thank you.
Yeah, good catch. You're kind of us already.
When you said miscellaneous, that was what triggered me.
Yeah, no
So,
problem.
thank you.
And then our transfer in number, so most of our transfers in are coming from various non-general funds. Since we're proposing a fairly balanced budget and even seeing some operating surplus for the current year, we will reverse some of those transfers that we were anticipating for this year. Another note on the 4.2 million, a big chunk of that is for funding. So federal aid that we have received over the past few years, we will do a large transfer in with that remaining.
Kathleen, help me understand, go back to that slide, please. So it sounds like for a lot of the other categories, it's not like we have a whole lot of control over those. I mean, it's sort of they unroll the way they do. But what I'm hearing you say, or the way I'm interpreting, the transfers in, that's kind of like a spigot that we can, if we're doing well in other areas. So in essence, having a lower transfers in is actually a good thing because we're doing well in other areas. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
and so
thank
we're not pulling from other non-general funds to support the general.
Who are watching us on YouTube, I need to do a quick settings change so that they can see your screen.
Okay.
It's good, people are watching.
You can do a mime presentation.
Like you'd have to like, it's numbers.
Not easier to present versus to the screen.
No, I don't.
Yep. Hope this works. So this slide represents our projected expenses for the current year. So our salaries and payroll expenses, we budget at like full employment and full insurance use. So we typically see a pretty big savings when we end up having position vacancies or people not using their full insurance for the highest insurance plans available. So yes, there is significant savings in both salaries and payroll assessments. Our materials, services, and capital, we're estimating coming in about 10%, net compared to budget. Our transfers out, basically transferring out everything that we anticipated, minus an unemployment reserve transfer. That unemployment reserve fund is already fully funded. We haven't used much of it this year, so we push that transfer out. At next month's board meeting, we'll submit a resolution to transfer $800,000 of contingency funds to some of our capital projects to be used in repair projects as well as IT life cycle for next year. So you'll see a resolution on that in next week's meeting. All right, so Alicia has offered to enrollment a little bit, or a couple of
Yeah, so here's a quick look back on our FTE. And for those of you who are new to Oregon higher ed, we're funded on it's called a full-time equivalency. It's a little misleading because it really doesn't represent a full-time student. It's a weird calculation of hours. No one at the state has been able to remember why 510 clock hours is one FTE, because that doesn't equal a full-time student load. But regardless, our historical FTE, the reason we go back to 2006 and 7 is that was the start of the recession in Central Oregon. And you can see how quickly our enrollment grew until the peak at 2011. And we are just about 101, 102 students shy of doubling in that very short time frame. We don't want to go through that kind of growth again, because what happens on the backside of that is this decline. And this mirrors what we see at community colleges nationally. So this is not just us, it's not just Oregon, but it is a trend that we see nationally. You can see in 1920, towards the end of the 1920 academic year is when the pandemic hit. And we had 1 week to shift from fully in-person operations to almost fully remote operations. And the decline in enrollment we had the 2 years following that. Again, that follows state and national trends. We're not unique. We are a little unique in that we didn't drop as much as most. During that period, we dropped, I think at our peak about 8%. Most community colleges nationally and in the state dropped 12 to 30%. So we had a little bit more safety net in that sense. And then the year-to-date numbers for 2022-23, this is just the start of the second week of the term. So we still have a lot of registration activity happening, right? A lot of our non-credit classes haven't registered yet. A lot of our college and now stuff we don't process until next week. A lot of our big classes like symphony and band and choir, those all happen next week. And so I always hesitate to show the current picture because it's not a complete picture for this year, but you can see how close we are to last year. And I expect that with all, what I know of other activity happening here in the next week or so, we'll end this year either equal to or slightly above where we were this past year. So it's a good trend from an FTE standpoint. And then being on the next slide, you can also see the same kind of trend with headcount. Headcount's a little more up and down because that's an easy one. Every single body counts as one, whereas the other, it's a complicated formula behind it. But again, where we are now, I do expect us to end a little bit equal. Each one of these have different meanings, right? FTE matters when we calculate our state funding formula. Headcount matters because that's who we serve in our district predominantly, okay? So they both have different uses and applications, but we are trending in a positive way. And we're starting to see that a little bit more statewide too.
Felicia, did you want to talk about tuition fees?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact. Thank you. So as part of our budget planning this year, the leadership team looked at what is it that we want to absorb in order to somewhat pay our bills, but hit the priorities that Lori talked about. What do we want to do for wages? What do we want to do from some of our infrastructure needs for HVAC systems and new roofs and that are well beyond their lifespan, right? And some of the other activities that Lori mentioned, and we'll talk a little bit more about some specifics later on. But as we built that into our budget for the next year, you can see we recommended about a 4% change, 4 to 5% change, depends on the categories of tuition we have. As a reminder, or for folks who are new in district, that's for all of our students within our district boundaries, from Warner Springs down to Lapine, Prineville over to Sisters, and all points in between. I'm going to skip over non-resident veterans for a second. Out of district is anybody else in Oregon and any state that borders us. And then back up to non-resident veteran, it's 50% of the difference between in district and out of district. And that's a state mandate on that, how we calculate that tuition rate. So that's why it's a sandwich in between those. And then out of state international, technically COCC doesn't have an international program, but we do support international students through OSU Cascade. So that's why you see that tuition category there. These are in par. One of the things we kind of do a little bit of truth checking with each year is to compare ourselves to certain regional universities and out-of-state areas to make sure our out-of-state tuition is relatively comparable to as if a student was to attend in-state at their home location. And we are on par. We looked at a couple schools in Idaho, Montana, California, that sort of thing, and found that we were pretty darn close in that regard. So the recommendation is right around 5%, a little bit less. Round up to nearest dollar. We don't like to tell students your tuition is $118.16, right? We want to make it easy for us and them to do the math on that. The technology, student activity, and green energy fees, those are all fees that we charge on a per credit basis for students who take our credit classes. We are not recommending any changes there. The technology fee, we made some relatively bigger changes in the last couple of years. And the student activity or green energy fee are student self-imposed fees that our students put on themselves, and they haven't asked for any changes in those. So recommending to leave those the same.
Can you remind us what the tuition increase was last year?
Yes, it was
$4.
Totally forgot. Yeah,
$4, about 3%, a little over 3%.
And so total, and we also look at how we compare to Oregon State University Cascades campus, and not surprisingly, we're still a great bargain compared to those options. The bottom shot then shows you what it would be if you were a full-time student, 12 credits or more each quarter at COCC.
Can I add to that? The Oregon Community College presidents are always talking about what they're going to pose to their boards in terms of tuition. And the truth is there's a pretty wide variance. there, at least, the last time we checked, there was one school that wasn't gonna raise tuition. One school was gonna raise it $1, $2. PCC in Portland, 4%. Lynn Benton, 6%. So there's a wide variance. We're not as much maybe together in our proposals as at least I might have seen in the past couple of years. And just to reiterate, nobody likes to raise tuition. But I'll point out a couple things I know I've pointed out in the past. First of all, we just have some needs. That's reality to do the right thing and maintain our institution. This doesn't match inflation. What we're proposing does not match inflation. We didn't, we weren't going to go there. And we've talked about in recent years a desire to be fairly consistent and predictable in what we're doing with tuition, so that we don't end up one year with 0% and, then 1% and then 11%, right? Because eventually inflation and these costs do catch up. So this was a number we felt was reasonable given the circumstances. And we thought we could come to you with a good budget. I mean, the other thing I'll note is there are schools who, and I don't mean to sound judgmental of my colleagues. There are schools who are very hesitant to raise tuition much at all. Some of those folks they are not in the shape we're in, frankly. They don't have the reserves we do. They don't have the flexibility that we do. They're really struggling. And so that, as I look long-term, and I know as you look long-term, that's something that we think a lot about. How do we position ourselves well for the future in a way that doesn't overburden one year's students over another? So I just wanted to add.
Yeah, and I'll add, oftentimes I've been asked in years past, like, why is the vice president of students talking about tuition increases? Shouldn't I be advocating for students and no increase? And I don't feel like I would be doing my job if I didn't advocate for something that allowed us to maintain the level of service and quality that we have. The expansion of some of our academic programs, some of our wraparound student support services, all the infrastructure work that Josh and his team are doing an amazing job on this year. We can't provide the quality education we need to do and do right by our students if we don't have emphasis along these lines and keep them at a reasonable pace for sure. And you'll see in the next slide why they're pretty darn reasonable compared to our peers.
Oh, yes, I did quickly. I was just looking at President Chesley and thinking, well, if the state budget fund comes in higher than the governor's recommended, are we looking at reducing some tuition, or are we looking at filling other holes in the budget?
We haven't discussed reducing tuition. That is not what I would recommend. Frankly, I think that if the budget comes in higher than it is right now in Ways and Means, I think that'd be, if it comes in significantly higher, it'd be pretty miraculous. But you know,
people have hope.
You know better than Salem, better than I do. So we haven't discussed that. We'd have to discuss what we were doing. My inclination would be to use that money to shore up in some other places that are still pretty problematic in terms of deferred maintenance and other areas like that. But if it's significant, sure. But yeah, again, I'm not hopeful.
I kind of agree with you.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask.
Yeah.
The piece that I look at is that, I hate to raise tuition. We've talked about this before. And I know we always see the slide, and I always say every time, so I'm going to say it again. Just because we're one of the more affordable schools in the state of Oregon doesn't mean that we're affordable in absolute terms for everybody that we want to be affordable to. But the inflation rate from July 1 of 2021 to June 30th of 2022 was 8.5%. That means our costs were going up like that, but we raised tuition 3%. So, you know, we're not keeping up. And at some point, you know, you can, I'll use a term we use in construction, you can value engineer to a certain point, but at some point you've got leaks and you got bad things happening. So.
Is this a moment for me to turn to Zach Boone and have him remind us about our wonderful foundation? I feel like the moment is here.
Yeah, where would the overlay in terms of scholarships, where would the overlay look on this?
That's a great thing. We should add to that chart. Hi, everyone. I'm Zach Boone. I'm the Student Advancement Officer and Director of the Foundation. We offered $1.8 million in scholarships last year to COCC students. That's the highest in Oregon for community colleges. Where that lies there, other than PCC, that's the data we don't have. And that's a combination of annual fundraising and also our endowment returns. So that's about 450 students who have received full-time scholarships and then a number of other scholarship awards that don't run through the foundation that Alicia can speak to and support our students as well. So, but it's a pretty robust program. We're pretty proud of that. And it does help a lot of those students, which is why we actually spend a lot of those unrestricted dollars we get from donors advertising those scholarships. We try to make it as easy as we can for students to be aware of them, to apply to them. They can apply from their phone and to really get that money into the hands of our students. How's that, Dr. Jensen?
Well done. Well done.
And I would add, I mean, the pandemic has really shored this up, but the amount of emergency support that we have available for students is just exponentially higher than it even was 5 years ago. And continued donor support, different foundation support, different federal aid support, that is going to appears to be continuing that direction. It's not getting smaller by any means. We also have Oregon Promise, which I think has been thrown a lifeline in this legislature, at least as of a couple of days ago. And even if that doesn't happen, an increase to the Oregon Opportunity Grant is either part of this legislative session or in the next biennium. So there's lots of resources that are really here to help students where they need it most.
So we'll move on to some other revenue trends. This is ahead of myself. On this graph. Okay. So on this graph, the blue represents property tax, orange is tuition fees, green is state aid. You'll see that state aid is kind of tapering off, especially as we look at our forecast. Our largest revenue source of property tax continues to grow. This slide is a breakout of imposed taxes from the different counties within the district. The source of this data is directly from the taxing districts. All right, the next couple of slides, I will attempt to explain the state funding formula. So the state funding formula is used to calculate the distribution of state aid. It's dependent upon full-time equivalent totals and imposed property tax. So how do we get from 344 million to 9 million, which is what COCC is anticipating for next year? The components include the 344 million from the Community College Support Fund. We include imposed taxes from all the college districts in Oregon. The base amount is a payment between 1 million and 1.5 million to all Oregon community colleges. And then we have 554 million that's available for allocation to the community colleges. This formula is meant to promote equality of funding per student across Oregon, and the funding per student varies by district based on size and local property tax. All right, bear with me on this one.
So the one I think to note of this piece, you heard us talk about this in years past, is this really is a distribution formula. We have a finite amount of money, and at some point, if our FTE grows so much, there's no money left in that pie to distribute, right? So it's not if, just like in the recession when community colleges grew exponentially in the state, the amount of state aid didn't necessarily grow to that same amount. So we are limited to a certain degree. And that's just a unique piece that doesn't always show
But
up.
more students means more tuition.
That for us, that is more beneficial because we get so little of our revenue from state aid, right? So we're 17-18% of our revenue is state aid. There are some community colleges are upward of 50% in state aid. So when the state really struggles, we don't struggle as much. Once our enrollment really grows, we do a little bit better because more of our revenue comes from that tuition source. So it's a nuance to the formula. It's different in Oregon that you might see in other states.
So here's kind of a breakdown of all the community colleges in Oregon and their allocation estimated for next fiscal year. So for purposes of going through this calculation, steps are to calculate the weighted average FTE. We exclude the base payment from the allocation, and then we allocate TPR, total public resources, based on FTE. So at COCC, our weighted average FTE amount is 3,531. Which is right up here. We divide that by the total FTE for Oregon Community College, which is 62,000, and we get to 5.6%. The base payment is excluded from the total amount, so we are allocating this 554 million. So 5.69% times 554 million is 31 million as COCC's allocation. So we also consider property tax. COCC property tax can be close to 23 million. That is reduced from our total TPR, our total 31 million. And we have 8.6 remaining as our allocation. And then we add in the 1.16 as our base, and we get to 9.7, 9.8 estimated for next year as part of state aid. So total public resources at COCC, 30% is state funded for state aid and 70% is. Any questions on that formula, or is that clear enough?
Basically, the hydraulics are, the property tax just gets completely taken out of the state share.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't, the font is pretty small, but you can kind of compare to some of the other colleges. Looking at like Columbia Gorge, their property tax is 23% and their state funding is 77%. So, depending on the size and property tax imposed in the area, that can have significant impact.
So Kathleen,
Yeah.
as our property tax goes up, our state, what we get from the state goes down because they want to distribute it equitably.
Yep.
How do things like, when we agree to give up some of our local property tax because we're gonna approve a tax increment financing area in one of our cities, or it's approved without our, it's initiated without our approval, and so we're getting less of that tax revenue. Does that matter to us because it's made up by additional state funding?
Okay, Ellen's nodding yes. I'm not quite sure I follow because we're still receiving property tax revenue based on the 0.62% or $0.62 per $1,000 property assessed value.
Kathleen, she's got so many details to keep track of. Kathleen, you and I talked, it was months ago now, about some of the city's new proposals regarding incentives for people to build affordable housing and how you and I had some, you did the math, did some rough math, and the impact on us was frankly pretty insignificant. Because I'm so bad with my memory and my numbers, I'm not going to say what I think I recall it to be, our calculation, but it is negligible.
And the state does not take into consideration other sources of revenue like our cell tower leases.
Not at the moment. I know, so this is the current estimate. There may be some updates to the funding model. I don't know if now is a good time to touch on that.
Yeah, please, Alicia.
Yeah. So I've been part of the statewide work group for the last year plus that is evaluating our community college support fund, or the CCFS. And we've been asked to take a look at how we can kind of do a performance-based funding model, meaning how are we doing and how do we get a certain amount of our state revenue based on performance. And
So are these the changes that Dr. Chesley was talking about?
yeah, and so tomorrow we have last or second to last meeting before we recommend to HEC what that'll look like. But essentially they're calling it a support and a success model. I call it an input and output model, but it is looking at on the input side, the number of low income students determined by their Pell or ORSA, the Oregon Student Aid application. number of students of color, number of career and technical education students, and number of adult students defined as 25 and older. And those all align with state priorities for community college enrollments. So that's kind of the input side. You get points for the number of students that you enroll. Students can count in multiple categories. On the success side or the output side, the state's going to look at the number of students who have completed 15 or more credits combined here or with another institution. They haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. 30 or more credits, again, us and with another institution. And the reason those markers are important is we know nationally that if a student completes 15 or more credits, they're more likely to go on to that next threshold. If they hit 30 or more credits, they're more likely to go on to a certain credential. And there's scads of research around those numbers. So it's completion of 15 or more or 30 or more credits, completion of college level math and writing, and completion of a credential of any kind, credit and non-credit included. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing through the Center of Business and Industry and Professional Development and other non-credit training certificates, the American Heart Association work, that will all count towards this completion, which is a big shift to get the state to think beyond credit programs. Yeah, that was a big win. Maybe I had a loud voice.
No,
Are we excited?
Yes. And the initial modeling that we did, it bodes well for COCC. And I'm going to put there's an asterisk to that. We're reworking the data this week, have a new model that'll come out by the end of the week, should still bode well for us. The caveat, the asterisk to all that is we're recommending only a very small amount to start and graduate that in over the course of the next 4 bienniums, I think is where we landed last week. Hopefully not starting in the middle of this biennium and wait till the next. But HEC has made some of their desires known that might be a little bit different than what we may be recommending. So we'll see how that conversation goes.
And that was going to be minus the last model that the presidents all saw. That input and output section, that was only 10% of our budget. So it is relatively small. And then there's some recommendation that actually be implemented, even that 10% very gradually.
Absolutely. And yeah, it could be starting as small as 5% of first biennium, 7%, 8.5%, something along those lines. We also made the recommendation that at the start, part of the reason we wanted a smaller amount is we know that in higher education, unless there's some massive infusion of dollars, to change recruitment or change retention numbers by more than 1% per year is pretty miraculous. So if we all of a sudden said we wanted to completely fund the retention side of this, that takes some time to build up those programs and services and make an impact on students. So
Alicia, wouldn't it, I mean, I totally hear what you're saying, but if everybody's in the same boat, then aren't we dealing with relative success as opposed to absolute? I mean, if everybody had to face the same challenge, then why is one at an advantage or disadvantage than the other?
it still just takes time to make those changes. It is a big piece of that.
But the incentives are there for people to do it.
So I'm going to try, so this is my dissertation. Yeah, so this is my dissertation topic, so I hope not to totally get me off if you want, right? What we know is nationally, states who are funding it at this level don't see a difference in student success inputs or outputs or student recruitment or retention.
10%.
So if you really want to move that battleship, 10%, 20%, it
Not enough.
nationally, and I looked at 10 different states, and that research has been replicated time and time again, not because of me, I just haven't replicated it, but it's just, it takes that kind of incentive to really make those changes. And even with that money on the table, to build in the infrastructure you need to put the supports in place, it does take time.
And what's their response when you bring that up, that 10% is not sufficient?
We're not saying, we're agreeing that 10% is the place to start. Yeah. It's just, part of it is, one of the things we also built into this model is to say at year 3, we have to test it out and give our time to test it if it's really working to what we think it is, because we're not seeing those kind of returns in other states. So we don't want to allocate so much and then all of a sudden we have to back up and do something wildly different. The last round of changes they made to the Community College Support Fund were like 12, 14 years ago, and no one's ever paused to say, did that work? Did it do what it's supposed to do? So there is a kind of I think it's a 3-year look at, not necessarily a pause, but a stop. Let's look back. Did the formula do what we wanted to do? Did it make the difference we wanted to make? And if it didn't, where do we need to change it?
Okay.
So that's another point of evaluation.
As Alicia says, and knows, because this was her dissertation, that the data on whether performance-based funding really improves performance is at best unconvincing.
Inconsistent.
Inconsistent, let's put it that way. And I mean, in theory, I don't think that's a bad idea. Get paid based on what your results are. So we didn't, I mean, our school didn't make a lot of noise about the fact that this was going to be part of the model. But there are so many factors we do not have control over that are variables in student success. That's not an excuse, it's reality, right? So, yeah. And where there is performance-based funding, people learn to game that system. They do. I've seen it. You know, everybody adopts reverse transfer, right? So they can get more credit for all the degrees that they put out, right? Because yeah, wait, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to geek out like
I stopped.
I was geek out.
All right, we're gonna get into the forecast for next year and for subsequent years, but I just wanted to highlight some of our key revenue assumptions. Our community college support fund, this is based on information that we currently have. Next year, we're anticipating around 9.7 million, and then it may take off. Our property tax growth, we anticipate around 5.6%. Our tuition rates, so Laura was asking what we increased last year. Those are the amounts and percentages by student group. We also increased the technology fee last year, so we're not doing an increase this year. Enrollment, the current year, we budgeted a 4% decrease. For next year, we're budgeting at flat enrollment. I hope to see some small increases in subsequent years. And then our transfers in will taper off in large part because we will no longer receive the FERC dollars being transferred in. And then our key expenditure assumptions, like we're mentioning, faculty negotiations still taking place. Last year, our classified salaries were negotiated. There was a 7% increase as part of the classified wage study and 4% increase that was part of classified negotiations. This was on average.
Yeah, 7% on average.
Our payroll assessments will likely increase based on per data that we have currently available. And our operating costs related to services, materials, utilities typically increase between 100%.
Can I jump in here too and just say, I want to call attention to the fact that we've been trying our best to address salaries. Right after I got here, we had done a salary study and we implemented that. So that's 4 years ago. And we knew that we needed to do something similar with classified wages, and we did that. And we found out we were significantly below comparables. Now we're in faculty negotiations. That's the time you do those studies, you make those analyses. I do see in the coming years that the appropriate tactic to take, whether it's next year or the year after, is to again look at administrators. And one of my goals is to try to get us on a somewhat predictable schedule of salary review. And my hope is that what we do, we don't have these big adjustments to make. And like we did, because this year we're making some big adjustments. And I'd rather try to find a way to keep things a little more predictable and a little more steady. So I just want to call that out there as a future expense.
Can you go back? I have one question about that. On the payroll assessments. Obviously 38, 41.8, 42.4, that is a significant amount. But I'm intrigued that 25, 26, it looks like it drops, which at least from my experience, that's the first time I've ever seen an estimate go down. Might understand that people may feel like that may be kind of where it's going to peak. And some of the changes that have been put in place in past years are finally going to be seeing results as people get old and move out of different tiers.
That's what we're hoping, we get data from the state as far as what we can project for PERS.
Okay.
We're funding it significantly right now and next year. And we really hope it tapers off eventually.
Thank you.
So looking at our revenue and expenditure forecasts for next year and subsequent years, the blue column is what we project for next year. The revenue section is primarily based on the key assumptions that were in the earlier slide. A note on summer session. So for probably the past 10, 15 years, the college has recognized all revenue and expenses as part of a non-general fund for our summer term. The proposal for this year is to move it to our general fund as it is tuition, kind of our core operating revenue stream. So that's why you'll see that increase there. In past years, we've had a significant transfer in from our summer session non-general fund. So that will drop off, but the revenue less expenses will, hit our operating. Our other revenue line, Laura kind of, questioned that. And I mentioned the two other new revenue sources, so that's the differences there. And then for expenditures, so this includes key assumptions regarding budget increases, plus the historical underutilization trends in spending and position vacancies. I mentioned earlier, we budget and request for appropriation for full employment, when in reality, our salary and payroll assessments typically come in 7 to 10% below budget. So that's reflected in projected amounts. So based on our projected totals for FY24, we would see an ending fund balance that's well above our requirements. Any questions on this slide? I move on.
I think it's just, as I get my brain around a whole bunch that's new, but what's the difference between the blue column there and the document that we looked at in terms of the 23-24 budget, where some of the numbers are a little bit different?
Yep. That's actually a great segue. So the next slide is what we are proposing for our general fund budget. And great eye, it is more than, especially, so our expenditures are more in what we're requesting for appropriation than what we are projecting. So our projection includes anticipating there will be staff vacancies where we will have savings. So I've used historical data and looked at the past 5-10 years to see how much we come in under our salary lines and our payroll lines. Okay. So it's a pretty conservative estimate.
I mean, the previous slide showed we're like 10%. It's 10% down this year. So there's a lot of a cushion.
Yeah, earlier in the presentation, I think salary assessments were reduced 13% savings within the budget. So this slide is year over year, our current budget compared to our proposed budget for next year. One note on the contingency and financial aid line. We're proposing to increase our contingency from $800,000 to $1 million. So that if we end up with significant savings, we would have budget authority to do a larger transfer out at the end of this year. And then it's also worth knowing there's a 6.3% increase in salaries and an 8.7% increase in payroll assessments. This is due in large part to increased PERS, and also it's pending negotiations with our large student group. This is just a side-by-side comparison of our object class year over year. Salaries in green and payroll assessments in the Royal do continue to be our largest expenditures. 80% is pretty consistent with other community colleges in Oregon as well as across the US. Yellow represents materials and services. Navy is our transfers out, and a little sliver of dark green is capital outlay within our general fund. All right, so consistent with past years, we've maintained a conservative approach to budget development and a disciplined approach to spending. We seek to provide accessibility and affordability for our students, keeping tuition fees low, providing new ways to access instruction. Our intention is to use grants strategically and invest in employee wages, facilities, and technology in order to promote student success and quality education. All right, I'd like to take some time to address any questions.
Joe.
May I ask a couple questions? And this might be for Dr. Chesley, but just a couple questions for some of the programs under general funds. There were a few that have like big jumps, and I'm not questioning them. I just like to understand them. And so the two that particularly stuck out at me were emergency medical services, and the other one was GIS.
Most likely adding faculty members or promoting from like part-time faculty members to if it's an amount that's like over $100,000.
Oh, yeah, one went from 345 to 491. One went from 383 to 523. So I just thought that there might be like some additional programming or something like that. That's why I didn't.
And I'm gonna, it's almost certainly personnel.
Yeah.
Anne Marie,
It definitely is that with EMS. I'll have to get back to you on GIS, but we did add an additional faculty member in the demand was really helpful.
Yeah, that was what I was just curious was, are these just programs that there's a lot of need for, and so there's more costs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So maybe similar to what Laura asked, but looking more at the buckets. Noting that in most of the function buckets, the increase overall at the bottom line was somewhere between 4 and 7% or something like that. And then in instructional support, it was 11. And so a similar type of investment, or
no, I think for instructional support, it's a much smaller bucket. So change is reflected higher in percentages. And I believe there were a couple of positions that had previously been in instruction department and have moved to instructional support. One in particular is a community education position that's now in instructional support. I believe there was 1 or 1.5 more. So we moved from kind of instructional department to instructional.
I have one more question and a comment. The question is just a little thing is, can we get next time, or at least can I get a copy of the slide? Because I have old eyes and I'm having trouble sometimes seeing the numbers, and it'd be helpful if I can follow. And the second thing is great job. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Feel free to email me prior to next year's meeting or even next month's meeting.
we'll make sure you'd like them in the packet is what you're saying.
Well,
to look at ahead of time.
What I'd like is, it'd be great to have it in the packet, but I understand we're working on the fly and you guys are adjusting based on what the legislature's doing. So that's not even my request. If it can't, what I'd like to have is a physical copy here that I can look at, because I have trouble reading up on the screen. That's all.
I will say I was making edits at like 2 p.m.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. You're trying to be, you're looking at tax revenue. You're looking at tax projections. You're looking at what the legislature is doing today. And so, yeah, no, I'm not complaining that it wasn't in my packet at all. I just would like to have it in front of me to be able to look at simultaneously.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. So finally, if there are no other questions, I would just like to say thank you to my colleagues, the SLT members who been part of the collaborative effort throughout the process, and thank you to the board and budget committee. And one other note, the tuition resolution is later in the agenda.
Thank you, Kathleen.
I think most of the
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Those in second, and good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None.
Well, thank you very much. We will adjourn back to the open session. And let's take a couple minutes. People from the budget committee are welcome to leave or stay, whatever you would like. But this is an opportunity for you to extricate yourself gracefully if you want to do that.
Take the chance. Thank you very much.
Really big ones.
That's my finish you. Thank you. It's nice to meet you. Do it again.
Yeah. I'll get in touch with
I don't want
It's very nice to make sure.
Well, the
Sticking around, Harry?
What are we supposed to do?
yeah.
Throw 10,000 at their tax.
All at once.
All right, we'll be there.
Okay. And so pattern, what they do, because they're not crazy. To look at. And so basically. We have to just nod and say, okay, makes sense. But as far as having any impact, I don't see it.
Also budget. I think, you know, if you do have more questions, you could meet with Kathleen and ask the additional questions and for breakdowns, because they do. They're just not necessarily where.
Where we should try and do it. We question whether we should add a position. Position. That's all. We just want to pay without day in and day out. So we just sort of look at it and say, okay.
We kind of remember the frequency that they do the reviews of programs and their full write-ups. Just, you know, that recommendation does exist. They one time gave us all of them for a year. Stack of papers. So, you can request those. We have a couple more minutes, Bruce. Are you gonna wait a second or are you gonna step?
You want a couple of minutes?
Already got this, but I believe that the, yes.
Yeah.
And I.
Yeah.
No. Oh, do we have it? I just was adding. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you had the board. Date.
Yeah,
you
could, yeah.
Did I get it wrong?
It's just, I'm sure you hit 0 and it didn't.
Yeah.
it Didn't register. It said maybe 1.
The grade is. And they're gonna be noticed.
Or at least.
So much more. That won't be mine. I didn't do that. It's like.
So we think Kyle.
Don't.
I think Kyle. Okay, I have.
Why don't I
Yeah.
quickly introduce you?
Right, yeah.
He was-
It's not always
You
going
said-
to be that night, correct? I did learn that.
Did you know that?
I
But Matt's got
I knew that was something new.
Good, thanks, Brad. Yeah, feeling good.
I'm so tired.
It was, when I was growing up. Regardless, thank you. There's good or bad, it's details. And obviously, I understood it.
We made it.
Wait, you knew you know.
Yeah.
Our son,
And then he went to.
yeah, great experience.
Phenomenal. Only three.
I think all these. Well, two.
Like
three,
seven.
so.
Incredible.
Last.
Yeah.
In many ways.
In many ways, yeah.
Well respected.
Yeah. Top half of them.
Distrust. Bill. 20 years. But it's still.
Yeah, that's not.
We might have started considered. We went visited with one of our finalists and. Not.
Well, it's just.
So that's good.
Here's project. Oh.
Yeah.
We're just gonna be a 25. We thought it would be retired. Really, you go.
Yeah, we were.
And it was not, it's gotta go. I'm guessing this is gonna go like. So.
Very nice. You funded the scholarship and you sit there to go.
Very well. So Scott will do his master's and he'll graduate in January, our 25th anniversary. Which is exciting.
Yeah.
So after we'll celebrate the 25th, and we shall, I will go in February. So. This is- It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a good point. That's actually, he wanted to. Or maybe not. That's too bad. He's really delightful. So I'm going to the next 3 weeks. If he's thoroughly enjoyed this, he's asking me to school. Italian. Because we got her book, sent on. And he says, I can't wait until he's lost. She's always his English and all this. She's a good host, but she doesn't know flat.
Just to change.
We ready to start again? I'm gonna go ahead and start the meeting again. Yeah, that's okay. First item is the consent agenda. We can keep going. I just need a majority here, so. The next item is the consent agenda with the minutes. Any questions or concerns about that? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand or signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Next item are information items, financial statements. Anyone have any questions for Kathleen? Good job. We're tired of financial statements for tonight.
Thank you, Kathleen.
And you're probably exhausted.
And these were easy compared to those. So.
I have a quick question. So with the county, we were always with the state fund that we put our money in. We were kind of limited to the amount we could put in there. Never see us being limited. Are we?
Our LGIP or I mean, I assume you're looking at the cash and cash. equivalents.
Yeah.
Not that I know of. I think we were limited to where we can put our money.
But the amount we can put in there, we just keep doing it.
I.
Yeah, well, that's what you're doing.
Yes.
So good.
Great. The next item is new hire reports. Anyone have any questions for Laura? Please.
You'll notice on the new hire report, Kyle Matthews. I promised him no public embarrassment at the meeting, but if you did meet Kyle, the new executive assistant in my office, and who will be working with all of you, he's right there with the.
Hello.
And now everything's gonna be perfect.
Now, is that because he doesn't get easily embarrassed, or does he now know that he can't trust you?
Kyle is an introvert. And I totally respect that because I am too, honestly.
No. I had a chance to meet Kyle. I think this is gonna be great. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Cool. Next item, real estate committee update. Joe, I got you just as you were putting the brownie in your mouth. There we go.
So we did meet actually yesterday. And just kind of an update, no action to be done tonight. We will be coming back in May. If you remember, we had option A, option B, and option C in regards to how the water distribution line would come through the properties of Central Oregon's community college. And thanks to Mr. Clinton, he asked some questions and he was pretty much a forceful force of nature to say, let's look at why is the city wanting to do this 2 or 3 times on the same project at the same location and disrupt the traffic 2 or 3 times over the next 4 or 5 years. The city of Bend came back and said, okay, we're going to save some money. We're going to go down to Chevron Park right away, instead of going across our power line, which is option A, if I remember right. So you do have our Lori Chesley and our attorney, and also Peter, in regards to looking at the land value, exchange value, or land value valuation, so they can come back to the board and say, yes, this is what we recommend, and get this thing done and over with. We've been worrying this thing to death for the last 8 months. So I think that I know that Laura, you as an advocate of that Sheldon Park project, but they said, you know, it's good to talk about gas, electricity.
I just wanted us to think about all of it, that's all.
Yeah.
Think it through. So it does seem like it's been forever, but I'm glad that we've thought about every angle and every. And thank you, Jim.
And thank Josh Clausen, who.
Thank you.
In that too. And we've got executive session actually to talk in a little more depth about that.
So anyways, it's gonna be good. We just matter, we are down on the 30 days to hopefully get this all squared away off our shoulders.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions at this point? Again, we will have executive session later. Okay, let's move on to the next thing, which is the NWCCU mid-cycle visit. Anne Marie and or Alicia, you guys did.
I can do the presentation and Alicia's gonna take all the hard questions.
There's a theme here tonight.
As you know, we are accredited by the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, NWCCU. And as part of that, we get periodic visits and we make periodic reports to that organization. And so we want you to know that next week, we are having one of those periodic visits. And I'm here to tell you just a little bit about. Please, the space bar. If you just move your mouse and click it into the screen. But please don't trip on my cord. I'll do my best. So you mean if the cursor's in the screen, move the cursor into the screen and then click it to the screen. Here we go. Okay. So we are on a 7-year accreditation cycle. And in the 4 quadrants that you see there, we produce relatively substantial reports. The most substantial of those comes in the year 7 time. And it was in 2020 that we had our year 7 visit, with the evaluation of institutional effectiveness. We are now 3 years after that, and we're at the mid-cycle visit. The year 1 and year 6 only have written documentation that goes into place, but we do also provide annual reports and updates on curriculum changes and sorts of things. So being in the mid-cycle part of this, I just want to tell you a little bit about what the group that's coming next week is interested in, what they're going to be asking us questions about. And I will get to a point in just a couple of minutes about where I'm talking about your role in all this. It's easy. Okay, so the mid-cycle report focuses essentially on these 3 things. Assessment, or how are we looking at student learning and student achievement, as well as how are we looking at assessment of our overall programs in the various units that we have on campus. The group also is interested in how we use data to inform our planning and our decision making. And so we spoke to that in our report. We will also speak to that in the interviews that they will have with us. They're interested in what kind of planning we do. So for example, the strategic plan work that we've been going through, guided by Alicia Moore and Christopher Hazlitt this year, is really important for us to do as a community. And so we speak to how we involve various members of that community and get constant feedback, and that it's a very collaborative process. And then finally, the last thing they'll want to focus on is any outstanding recommendations that hadn't been resolved since the last visit. I'll explain those in just a moment.
And so outstanding is a different,
Recommendations.
but that's different from what most of us think about the term outstanding, right?
Yes, remaining recommendations. I believe it was 4 that we had that we were already taking care of 2 of them and checked them off the list. So we have 2 that they're still interested in following up on.
Okay.
So this visit happens next week, Thursday and Friday. There's a team of 3 people, 2 of them coming from institutions in Washington, 1 from Nevada. And they will conduct interviews with a whole variety of folks that they have requested to meet with over 2 days, just a little under two days visit. They focus largely on standard 1. That's a little misleading because that sounds like a very small slice of the pie, but there are only 2 standards in the accreditation. And standard 1 actually has 18 different subsets with multiple sentences in each of those. So it's a bigger task than it sounds like. And then of course, addressing those remaining recommendations that we are still with. Okay, so I wanted you to know what those recommendations are. I'm just going to spend a minute on this, and I want you to focus on the bold text there, and I'll give a little more information in the next slide. So one was that they wanted us to more effectively measure our community enrichment goal. This is one of the 2 aspects of our mission, student enrichment, student success and community enrichment. And so they wanted us to be a little bit more clear in how we are defining and measuring that. And then the second thing is how we improve our systemic and ongoing assessment practices at the college. We had a good start in 2020, but things needed to prove themselves a little bit. And so they want to come back and check on how we're doing in that area. Just to give you a little bit about how we have responded to these recommendations. The first one, where we were asked to more effectively measure our community enrichment goal. Some of the things that we have completed are that we developed institutional success indicators, ISIs, as we like to call them, specifically for community enrichment. And these were approved by you in 21-22, so last year you approved those. We also this year spent time in the fall and winter terms developing a list of peer institutions. Started with work from institutional effectiveness. They brought us a list of 18. We looked at the measurements and whittled that down to about 5. And we are going to next be working with those institutions, reaching out to them, communicating with them to find out if that's okay, right? Is it okay to be our peer institution? Will you play in the sandbox with us? And assuming that they say yes, then our next step is to start developing data sharing agreements so that we can benchmark ourselves against those peer institutions. And then in relation to recommendation 2, improving our assessment practices, we, as of a couple of years ago, completed our first 5-year cycle of academic program review, in which all disciplines do a self-study and review of the goals and needs of that program, and produce both a written report and presentations. We have this year's round of academic program review presentations beginning on Friday, in case you are interested in those. We also completed a 5-year cycle of instructional assessment, where we're looking at both CTE and general education outcomes and measuring student learning and seeing how we can then improve to further increase success in student learning. Last year, after having completed that 5-year cycle, our assessment projects were slightly different than those previous ones, in that we discovered in that first 5-year cycle that outcomes that were really hard to measure. And we needed to do some tweaking of those. We needed to revise those. So we had multiple groups of faculty working across the disciplines last year to revise those outcomes, make them more measurable. We've worked our way through conversations about them and then approved those in the fall. So now we have the most updated outcomes. And then the other thing that we've been working on is mapping outcomes for our CTE programs in such a way that is very clear to faculty, students, and anyone else who wants to look at these maps, in which class they are being introduced to particular skills to meet outcomes, when they will be working on them, reiterating them, and when they should show mastery. And if you looked at our, if you want to look at our mid-cycle report, we provide some graphics of what those actually look like. So it's really very clear along the pathway where what students are learning when. Next steps for in relation to assessment are to continue to simplify and digitize our process. It's been very basically paper oriented up until now. And I've really been asking our assessment and curriculum director to move us into a more digital format that's also more streamlined and simplified and easier for faculty to use and find benefit. And then finally, another next step for us is to think about how we incorporate course level assessment into this overall system. We do that on a regular basis in instruction, and faculty report on the kinds of assessment work that they're doing in their annual reports of activities, but we don't have that fully integrated into the full assessment. All right, your role in all of this. Well, the good news is at the bottom line here. The team that has is coming next week has not requested anything of you. But as part of your role as the board, of course, your job is to understand generally the accreditation process. And at a time when you had a longer time for me to present, I could certainly walk us through that in more detail. We don't need to do that tonight. The other thing is to know the institutional success indicators. Again, we've talked about these at previous board meetings. I'll send out this slide and provide you a link if you want to review those on our web as well. And that is what I have for you in terms of letting you know about the visit that we will have next week.
Thank you.
Do you have, do you have any questions for Alicia? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
This may not, Anne Marie went through this very concisely. This is a lot of work for quite a lot of people. And Anne Marie has, this has been part of her new job to jump right into accreditation, and really, really happy with the results.
I just have one question. We do spend a lot of time with this. And if you looked at what you're reporting now, and 7 years ago, you did the same thing. How much is there change? How much change is there in what? The typical layperson would be able to say, yeah, I see a big change that we've had to address different processes and room. To me, it just takes we spend every year, that's I think, I don't know. That's my 50,000 foot level. I know there's some value. But can you tell me, I mean, would
This is
there,
a good return on investment time.
there you go, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do remember we're recording this.
Actually, I do think it's a good investment in our time. Accreditation in many ways is about continuous improvement. Assessment is certainly about continuous improvement, and we always want to improve. We always have room to improve. And so providing these regular reports on in these intervals gives us the opportunity to report on how we're doing, how we're making improvements to what we're doing. So I do find it valuable in that way. In relation to your other question, I think was basically about how similar are reports from one to the next. Yeah, there are definitely some similarities, certainly in the overall structure of how we run things. But if we're doing our jobs well and we are working toward continuous improvement, there are going to be changes that we note along the way in each of those reports. Yeah.
Alan?
Question that seems to me like good to ask right now. You know, when you go to the legislature and you hear them talking everything, I feel like they question how much success are you having with your students, and why does it cost so much to run an institution? And I really want to tell them that it's because of all the rules you make us have. And so this is like a lot of work. This is not really helping the student. It is indirectly, but it's not in class. I kind of was curious if I was try to answer that. Is half your job, 2/3 your job? I mean, a lot of our administration just that deals with a lot of stuff, even with we're going to talk later about the MTM and all that stuff. And, you know, that's all extra stuff that isn't in the classroom. And so it's like, well, guys, you know, you're making us do all this work. I'm looking for an answer and stuff.
I think we need to think of it as reporting on work that we're doing anyway. Right? There are certainly things that come from accreditation bodies that might drive how we approach some of the work that we do. But we would still be doing a lot of this work even if we didn't have to report on it, because it's good for students. It's good for us to get them to the place they need to be by doing our work better all the time.
So a lot of work that we do is just work that we have to do to be an institution. And that's just part of being an institution, and you just got to pay for it.
Right.
Yeah, and if I might jump in and say that the academic program reviews have become one of the most inspiring and important storytelling vehicles for all the good work that's happening in the classroom. So my team attends those academic program reviews, and the stories and good news to share that comes out of it fills us with a year of things to share and tell from an advancement lens to our donors, to market our programs. I love those programs. I love those APRs, but I think this assessment has gotten us to be better at telling those stories and then market those programs to new students. Thank you, Jen.
Any other questions? Great, thank you guys very much. And thank you, Alicia. Appreciate it. Next item, new business, tuition and fees. Kathleen talked about this earlier. proposed in the budget and the assumptions that we saw earlier are some increases. I don't know if people have any questions. There's a chance for us to discuss more. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I just will repeat what I said in the budget committee, which is I hate raising tuition, but I don't see an alternative. Our costs are going up. This isn't even keeping track or keeping pace with inflation. And so it pains me, but I think we have to do it.
I'm going to take that as a motion.
I move that we approve the tuition as proposed by staff, with the increase.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moving second. Any further discussion? Alan?
Yeah, I just want to add to that, Laura, that if you have a quality program, you need to have a quality program. So we need to make sure we fund it, and students get so much more value out of a quality program than a mediocre. So we're doing quality.
And quality means maintaining the physical environment, paying staff appropriately that we want staff to be here. So
It is a balancing act that we do, and each of us as individuals may bring fairly different priorities, but that's why you have a body of 7 to come with this stuff. Let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the tuition, and actually there are no increases on the fees, but basically the resolution is brought to us signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. Next item is suspended programs. There's a resolution talking about, in much the same way we oftentimes hear about new. Are you going to do a little presentation or not?
just a tiny bit.
Okay, that sounds
Finish out
great.
your thoughts.
No, that sounds good. It wasn't clear to me that there was a presentation involved with this. So let's go ahead and turn it over to Anne Marie.
It's really just a few sentences of information, but yes, we do occasionally need to suspend particular programs. The 3 that we're looking at in business, I just wanted to mention, it is a little bit in the right up here, but 2 of those programs are ones that are replicated elsewhere. One of them is about to be replicated in the next resolution that you're going to look at. And we felt it was confusing to students to have too many degrees on the books because they're really redundant. We're asking to suspend those 2. And then the third, which is a certificate, 1-year certificate in marketing. We still offer these classes, but our advisory board in business said, this really isn't getting people out into an actual job at the end of this. So there's no reason for us to do this. That's what I have to say, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Or Alicia.
Or leave.
I would just say that.
That's going to be a new meme here.
I would just say that this is one thing that I've asked about for a long time, and I'm really glad that we do it. And when I say asked about, not because we don't do it, just because I'm always interested in it, because we're always really public when we start new programs about there's a need for this, and so we're adding this. But I'm really glad that we also look at the things that we offer and say, look, we just because we've always offered it doesn't mean it's a good idea to continue to offer it. And especially when we want to be careful with our resources, if it doesn't make sense, we shouldn't do it. So I'm delighted to know that, I don't like to say we're cutting programs, but we should when we need to.
Right, and to be clear,
Yeah.
all of these classes are still in place.
Yeah, it's the certificate.
Yeah,
right,
it's the
but-
packaging of them that is in you.
And then we don't have to say we have a certificate that nobody got.
Well, that's true.
So we don't teach out. This isn't like a teach out situation. This is just training.
Correct.
I would
make a motion to approve this. Hold on a minute. Let me just read it. Be it resolved that COICC Board of Directors approves the following deleted academic programs effective fall 2022. Management AASO, Marketing Communications CC1, and Business ASOP.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you.
I have one little comment.
Yeah.
AASO, ASOT, sometimes I'm reading this stuff and I get confused on what they are, and then later on I find out what it is. I'm just saying, I'm not in this business that much, so I don't know what these all mean.
It's a lot of acronyms, yes. The ASOT, let's see. The ones that we're swapping out for, you remember a couple of years ago, and this actually relates to the next thing we're talking about anyway, is the building of major transfer maps and specific degrees that represent the work of those major transfer maps. So the students can transfer to a university or college, four-year institution as a junior in the discipline. So Associate of Science transfer, Associate of Arts. Yeah, yes, I can't remember them either, Alan, so.
Take it out next week. You wouldn't be able to-
Yes. In any case, where was I going with that?
You were telling me ASO, what it was, and.
Yeah. Associate Applied Science option in. Thank you. But we can forget the old ones, right? We're not
Yeah,
doing those
sure.
anymore. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But we are swapping some things out, and it is in line with the major transfer map work that's going on across the state. Can I just continue on that theme and get you to your next resolution?
The new associate transfer degrees in business and English literature.
The one that we're adding in business is one that we're just now swapping out. So the ones you just suspended, one of those is now going to become this new one. And the other is in English literature. Both of these were developed by committees of faculty from across the state. They are being agreed on. They will be used at every community college. So that again, students can transfer in the discipline as a junior when they transfer to a four-year school.
Great. Any questions for Emery? I would entertain a motion.
Be it resolved that the Central Oregon Community College Board of Directors approves the new associate transfer degrees in both business and English literature effective fall 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good, passes. At this point, we are going to adjourn to the contract review board meeting. Done. Laura.
It's very short. We're on that theme. So this is essentially kind of a rollback of a little bit of stuff last month. So the information that was presented last month for procurement changes requested that the board approve the $25,000 as the base limit. And the state has not yet approved that number as the base for procurement materials and supplies. So we need to kind of push it back until the state approves it to 10,000, which is what our prior. So we were at 10,000. We asked for 25,000 last month, and the state has not gotten there yet. So we're asking just to go back to what we had literally. We have not purchased anything between last month and this month at that new level. Other questions that may seem confusing, but I hope that makes some sense.
So why does the state tell us what we can do in regards to our policies and procurement?
There.
Wow, that's such a good question.
Read this 279 and you will see the answer.
Yes, I think that's a really valid question. The procurement rules are set by the state in terms of bids and other things, so we are required to follow them. But we have some flexibility in some areas, but some of these.
All the public contract.
Yes, contracting bids, so people can go for RFPs and things like that. So, sorry.
Okay, so I have two attorneys that look like they're agree with it. So I'm not gonna go look at ORS 279.
A, B, and C.
Thank you.
But if I hear you correctly, this is simply a case of timing.
It is time.
And when the state raises the threshold, you will come back again.
Yes, Charlotte is actively tracking it, because it's not a very realistic number today.
Great.
So.
Cool. On the last page, will someone make a motion?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors do hereby approve the proposed class procurement threshold change for direct purchase of goods and services to Central Oregon Community College rules of procurement.
Second.
Moved in second, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, great, that passes. We are going to adjourn back to the regular board meeting. And we're going to go right into Board of Directors operations. Jim, are you willing to start off with what you've been up to lately?
Sure. Number one, I attended a meeting, interview with a CFO candidate. And that meeting went so well, I think we have a positive outcome.
Well, thank you, Jim. Appreciate that.
It was there.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know.
I'll take full credit for that. And secondly, real estate committee meeting. And that's it.
Thank you, Jim. Alan?
I didn't really keep track. I'll just sort of throw this out there. I've been doing weekly Zoom legislative calls with OCCA. Had multiple OCCA board meetings, multiple OCCA executive board meetings. We have some issues there we're trying to work through, and we are. And then a DEI OCCA meeting, the diversity, inclusion, equity and inclusion yesterday.
Great, thank you. I appreciate all the time you put in there. Oliver? Laura?
I attended the Redmond reception for the anniversary of the Redmond campus. I had lunch with Dr. Chesley. I also participated in the interview with the finance candidate, but I didn't have quite as much influence as Jim did.
In spite of rather than because of.
Probably. And nonetheless, he accepted our offer. I had a meeting with Zach. I attended the meal of the year, and may I just say, I'm pretty excited because my husband and I were the successful bidders on the trip to Paris and Prague, which we are going to take hopefully in February, March of next year to celebrate our 25th anniversary.
Okay.
And my husband getting his master's degree. So I'm excited about that.
Happy to help.
And then I had a meeting with Rebecca Lambert, who, as you guys know, we recruited to join the budget committee. And I'm really happy that she's here. I think she might stay for a few years. So, and that's all.
Thank you. Erica?
I attended the Whiten Town Hall here at Wiley Hall, and Dr. Chesley introduced it. I also attended the OSU Cascades Advisory Board meeting. It was a committee meeting for their Cascades Edge program, and that was on the 4th. I also attended the COCC Meal of the Year, which was wonderful. It was so good to be back in person. And the Sun River Lapine Economic Development Luncheon on Tuesday, attended that, and you are speaking at a lot of things lately and doing an awesome job. So, that was an awesome presentation to show how we serve the region, and I was happy to be there. And then I attended the real estate committee meeting yesterday.
Great, thank you. Go.
I went to the Redmond ceremony, it was great. Can't believe it, we already got that anniversary already. It seemed like it just opened up 10, 15 years ago. Apparently it didn't. And also the real estate meeting yesterday.
Great. On March 9th, I had an opportunity to attend the 25th anniversary celebration of the Redmond campus. I had a chance, I don't remember the exact dates, but I met with a couple of candidates who are interested in running for the COCC board. On the 20th, I met with Alan and Lori to talk about sort of Redmond campus and sort of possible land usage. On April 8th, I had an opportunity to attend the meal of the year, which was just fabulous. And on April 10th, I attended the Caius Trust meeting where we determined that next year those funds will be used to put in place a full-time sustainability coordinator and a half-time videographer, sort of public relations and marketing person. So, okay. At this point, let's looking ahead to dates. There's a typo in the agenda that our next board of directors meeting is actually on the 10th of May. And it's going to be in Prineville. And then on Friday, May 19th, another anniversary coffee up in Redmond at the Artec building. And then our final board meeting of the year on June 14th up in Madras. So. Okay, any questions about that? Remind me when commencement is going to be, or is that 17th? Is that okay? Is that an in-person?
In person, back on the field. It'll be starting at 10 a.m.
Back on the
just-
field.
Back on the field, back in person.
I just was struck by the fact that the board meeting made it, but the commencement didn't. So I won't read into it.
It's gonna be perfect next time.
Okay, cool. At this,
No, Schultz doing it next time.
at this point, we're gonna go into executive session. This would be cool. We got lots of stuff still ahead of us, so. The COCC Board of Directors will now meet in executive session for the purpose of ORS 192.660, Section 1, subsection I, performance evaluation of the CEO, as well as ORS 192.660, Section 2, subsections D, E, and H, which are labor negotiations for the purpose of this and for the purpose of discussing real property transactions and consulting with counsel concerning current or likely litigation to be filed. Representatives of news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All of the members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the boardroom. Let's just take a couple minutes, let people filter out. And let Jen shut down as needed.